Hello and welcome back to another Giant Slayer TV video. This new year patch brings us new synergy, items, champions, and much more. So today we'll be doing a patch rundown to guide you on the new meta. But along with that, it's Thursday, so you know what that means. Tier List Thursdays. It's been a long time since we got new items in TFT, so today will be patch 10.1 items tier list written by our Diamond to Challenger analysts. But before we begin, don't forget to click the links in our description. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting news to come. The interest form is down below, so feel free to fill that out if you'd like to compete. Be sure to also follow Giant Slayer TV social medias and check out our amazing cast in the description. We'll kick things off with Leona. Leona is a one-cost Lunar Warden who gives additional flexibility and early game stability to defensively oriented Warden comps. As a pure tank, she offers no CC or ally buffing utility. Instead, her ultimate simply reduces incoming damage by a flat amount per hit, which is similar to the Knight trait from set 1. Leona will serve as a strong early game frontline unit for Warden players before getting cut in the later stages of the game. Leona's main contribution to Warden comps is her Lunar Alliance trait, which she shares and completes with Karma. This trait offers team stacking critical chance, critical damage, and spell power over the course of each round. This enables defensively geared comps to grind out their opponent and deal increasing amounts of damage in the longer rounds. The second Lunar unit is Karma, a 3-cost Lunar Mystic who brings a great deal of new options to Warden comps in the early game. Karma buffs her team's damage output by completing the Lunar trait and through her spell, which grants an ally a shield and attack speed. Karma also enables new defensive options as a low-cost Mystic, opening the potential for an early mid-game Lunar build featuring 4 Wardens and 2 Mystic as early as level 6. Next up, we have synergy changes. First up are Druids who look to retain early game dominance with an HP regen buff. Between this buff and the new Lunar Alliance, some extremely powerful early game comps are sure to surface this patch. Next up is Light, whose attack speed at 6 and 9 is unlikely to bring about a new top tier comp. However, the possibility of tracking down a dedicated Light build may get a bit more appealing if the shop pushes you in that direction. Overall, this seems like a positive change. There's also more changes on the champion side of things that may make Lights a lot more viable. Next, we have a 2 Ocean nerf, which is going to hit Warden comps that benefit from the mana gain of Thresh and Nautilus. This will also make them less ubiquitous as a mid-game frontline splash in nearly all comps. Overall, this is a well-deserved nerf to one of the most commonly played unit pairs. And finally, Shadow Alliance is getting slightly buffed, which may bring a few new Kindred comps back into the meta. Moving on to champion changes. So many champion buffs and nerfs going on in this patch, as you'll see in this image. However, let's point out a few main ones that will cause a shift in the meta. We talked about Lights before, but the champions Vayne, Jax, and Aatrox are all getting buffed. The extra health and damage alongside the synergy itself getting an attack speed bonus should be enough to bring Lights back into the meta. Although hyper rolling is still a risky strategy, these buffs should justify you to go for the comp when you get a perfect start like 5 Nasus's and a tier 2 Vayne. On the other hand, unlike Lights, the Blender comp did not get such favorable buffs. Nocturne, Sivir, and Kiana all received nerfs. The idea of this nerf is to make sure that you're not super rewarded for forcing this comp over and over again. It seems that from Challenger testing, though, the build is still viable in the top 4. We'll have to see if Riot Mort will hotfix a stronger nerf, as the intention is to stop the Blender madness. Other big changes are the nerfs and buffs to our legendary champions Amumu, Nami, and Master Yi. It's safe to say that Amumu and Nami are the most sought after units in the game. This nerf is fairly minor, so we don't think this will be taking the units out of the meta, but it is to balance them out a little bit better. On the other hand, Master Yi is probably the weakest legendary of them all. Majority of the time, he's used only for his Shadow synergy or if you decide to run 4 Mystics. There's only a slight buff of damage, but maybe it will be enough to make him relevant in the meta. That's going to be it for our patch rundown for synergies and champions. Stay tuned for our blog, which will be releasing a more in-depth patch notes analysis by our Challenger writer. There's also a lot of item changes, but we might as well cover it by jumping straight to our items tier list. Keep in mind the patch just launched, so this will be a predicative tier list, especially with the new items. At the top of our list, we have Force of Nature, Morellonomicon, Seraph's Embrace, Bramble Vest, Infinity Edge, Jeweled Gauntlet, and Rabadon's Death Cap. First up is Force of Nature, which has always been an absolute powerhouse. Just be careful not to skip your key items in the hunt for spats. Getting an extra unit on the board is extremely important for hitting additional synergies or saving your gold to roll down instead of going to level 9. Next up is Morello, which has been top tier for a very long time, and a slight damage nerf is a step towards making it a more situational pick. It is, however, just a single step. We expect Morello to retain its position as one of the game's strongest and most ubiquitous items. Seraph's Embrace is the premier mana item. The first spell cast of the match is by far the most important, and nothing helps you cast it faster than a Seraph's. Bramble Vest is the first of the new items, and it's both an interesting and seemingly very powerful one. Bramble Vest replaces Thornmail in the sense that it builds from 2 copies of Chain Vest and deals retaliation damage when the wearer is hit, doing so in a manner similar to the Electric Splash. Bramble Vest is also a spiritual successor to Phantom Dancer, mitigating the damage bonus from all incoming critical hits. This is effectively the combination of 2 items in one, and while none of them were top tier on their own in the previous patch, Bramble Vest has the potential to be an incredible item of high value frontline units, especially in Wardens who can make use of the base armor. As for Infinity Edge, there's nothing new here since it's still the best item in the game for attack-based champions. Jeweled Gauntlet is an item that has been enjoying a lot of success lately on Kiana, and is also a great value on spell-based carries such as Lux, Kindred, or Brand. Deathcap remains a staple for high-damage spellcaster carries such as Kindred, Brand, or Lux. Rabadon's maintains its high rating since it can effectively be used on any spell-based character and pairs exceptionally well with Jeweled Gauntlet since the damage stacks multiplicatively. At the A tier, we have Thieves' Gloves, Quicksilver, Spear of Shojin, Zephyr, Rapid Fire Cannon, Swordbreaker, and Hush. Thieves' Gloves is an incredible value proposition for just a single item. Characters who can make decent use of any acquired stats exist in most comps and keep this item a strong pick patch after patch. The new Quicksilver has potential to be one of the most broken items in the game. The effect certainly is powerful enough. There are some very strong units in the game who would benefit immensely from the CC immunity offered by Quicksilver. However, most carries are going to agonize over which item to cut from their full builds in order to make space for this. For this reason, it earns a spot in our A tier instead of our S tier. Quicksilver feels like a natural fit for Nocturne's 3rd slot and may find a home on some powerfully stacked frontliners such as a Mumu or Malphite. Spear of Shojin remains a powerful item with incredible potential to push sustained damage out of high mana spellcasters. Nothing major has changed with Spear of Shojin directly, though there is some potential for the reworked Ionic Spark to punish it in the right circumstances. Zephyr is rarely sought out for builds, but is always appreciated regardless of the comp. It's still one of the highest skill cap items in the game and has always held the potential to turn fights. Rapid Fire Cannon is a mediocre item in the hands of most characters, but enables both Olaf and Vygar to excel as hard carries. Despite remaining unchanged for several patches, RFC continues to move around the tier list as the meta shifts. Swordbreaker remains unchanged in this patch, however, the primary breaker of swords, Sivir, has been nerfed. We don't expect this combo to break as a result of this change alone, however, the frequency of blenders should fall off slightly as a result. Hush is the weapon of choice for Sivir and Olaf. They splash the effect all over the board, and the initial mana helps them get their ult online faster. They'll both likely see lots of play, and will almost certainly still enjoy wielding a Hush. However, the power level of the builds relying on these units will dip slightly due to the change. Other units will not likely want to build Hush nearly as often either. This feels like a much-needed change, though Hush is still quite a strong item. At B tier, we have Hand of Justice, Luden's Echo, Locket of the Iron Solari, Deathblade, Red Buff, Iceborne Gauntlet, Runan's Hurricane, Guinsoo's Rageblade, Guardian Angel, Frozen Heart, and Dragon's Claw. Hand of Justice is still incredibly powerful, but plagued by inconsistency. Nothing has changed with Hand of Justice this patch. Champions that enjoy the mana and make use of the life on hit will still want this, and anyone who likes to gamble can still throw it on their brand. Luden's Echo received a nerf at 1-star, a slight buff at 2-star, and a sizable buff at 3-star. This makes Kog'Maw and Ezreal very happy. Locket of the Iron Solari received a substantial nerf at 1-star, moderate nerf at 2-star, and no nerf at 3-star. For an early game item, this is a sizable nerf, although it will still likely see play in Berserker comps where it is best suited. Locket remains a reasonable defense option against poison builds. Deathblade is still an extremely powerful item without many good homes. The slow start of its stacking mechanic leaves it outshone by heavy hitters like Infinity Edge, but any AD carry can do reasonably well with a Deathblade. Red Buff has been in a strange place for quite some time. It doesn't really deserve the damage nerf it's receiving this patch, which got grouped in the more deserved Morello nerf since they share the same burn effect. This will continue to be a Sivir option that rarely sees play elsewhere. The new Iceborne Gauntlet is a very interesting item that seems custom built for Ezreal. Mechanically, this will suit characters who ult frequently, don't immediately kill their target, and keep rhythm of ulting about every second. An auto attack between each ult, like Ezreal, AD Kindred and Kog'Maw are perfectly suited for this item. Rune's Hurricane may see slightly more play in light comps and also with the new Iceborne Gauntlet, but will remain a mid-tier AD item. Guinsoo's Rage Blade is an AD item that has the misfortune of not being an Infinity Edge. It has some applications in the light comp and therefore may see slightly more play as a result. Guardian Angel remains a mid-tier item with situational uses and a Zed staple. A single Frozen Heart when placed in the front line Warden as intended has gotten stronger. This has rarely been the use case for this item, and most of the stacking and movement-based uses have been nerfed. Multiple Frozen Hearts do not seem like a viable strat simply for the extended range, though that may depend on the lobby and the meta. The duration of the slow after the unit leaves the effective radius has gone down again, so stacking Frozen Hearts on Kha'Zix or other constantly moving characters has become much less valuable as well. Overall, Frozen Heart hasn't been seeing much play lately, and it will likely remain that way, although Warden comps may give their Malphite a copy, or more if the meta becomes very AD heavy. Dragon's Claw remains a premier defensive staple in some lobbies and useless in others. Identifying when to build the item with enough time to assemble is an essential skill. At C tier, we have Warmog's Armor, Zeke's Herald, Bloodthirster, Hextech Gunblade, Giant Slayer, Redemption, Titan's Resolve, Trapclaw, Ionic Spark, and Static Shiv. Warmog's, like most other sources of healing, is still held back by the ubiquity of Morellonomicon. Characters that scale well with health such as Mundo and Crystal units enjoy this one, but the payout is generally not worth the item slot. Zeke's Herald is an acceptable item in a Berserker and Assassin-based comp since they can effectively make use of the attack speed without suffering from the positional requirement. Outside of this niche, Zeke's has very low utility. Bloodthirster has steadily fallen off despite being unchanged for quite some time. There are not many sustained-based auto-attack units in the game that would make use of the Bloodthirster, and the ones who do see play, such as Nocturne or Olaf, have built-in sustain and generally prefer a better item, such as Infinity Edge. Hextech Gunblade divides its value in a way that few units can effectively make use of. Kha'Zix is the champion who makes best use of Hextech, but benefits are generally not worth building the item for. Giant Slayer is a mediocre item, however, is an excellent source for TFT information, content, and guides. Ranger and Soulbound comps have both made use of Giant Slayers on their carries, but the comps are not exceptional, and the items see little play elsewhere. Redemption has been held back by inconsistency and the ubiquity of Morello for quite some time, and nothing has changed. It remains mediocre on most frontliners, with the exception of Zed. Titan's Resolve is a new item and is very difficult to evaluate at the moment due to its stacking mechanics. Trapclaw is perhaps TFT's okayest defensive item. The one-time use nature of the shield is a relatively low amount of protection for carries and is liable to get procced randomly by some incidental splash damage. However, the stun is substantial and can be used effectively as a reactionary CC on a frontliner to counter a single target spellcaster such as Kindred. This requires both strong positioning skills and very specific lobbies to justify the item choice, but will win games in the right circumstances. Ionic Spark has been normalized to deal a more consistent amount of damage to all units, with lower mana pool casters taking low damage frequently and high mana pool casters taking larger hits when they gather enough mana to cast. Ionic Spark has historically been built to counter rapid casters like Kindred or Akali in previous patches, and that niche is likely to flip to the opposite extreme. The new iteration of Ionic Spark has the potential to scale quite well against higher mana pool characters, making use of mana gain items such as Spear of Shojin or Ocean Alliance, and can scale even further with poison inflating mana pool caps. Regardless of the upside of the new Ionic Spark, it is likely to be grounded by the 3 hex effect radius, as well as the change from true damage to magic damage. Ionic Spark has not been a top meta pick for quite a while, and we aren't expecting any changes to that. Static Shiv lost some damage per hit, but gained the ability to scale to more targets when equipped to 2 and 3 star units. Overall, the item seems slightly worse than it was going into the patch, with the exception of Predators, specifically on Kog'Maw, who can make use of hitting additional targets to check for the Predator kill range and are often chased to 3 stars. Last Whisper is a new unique item that seems intended to help attack-based damage comps chew through tanky frontline units. Unfortunately, the units that want this most are unlikely to have a high crit chance. The single target nature of Rangers means that the rest of the Rangers on the board may not be able to benefit from the armor reduction. Last Whisper may have some potential in the hands of a Berserker who can splash armor reduction on the frontliners in a Warden heavy lobby. However, it's likely easier and more effective to use the Desert Alliance trait for that. Lastly, outside of our tier list, we want to talk about Alliance items, which are situational at best since they can enable additional synergies in certain comps, but the majority of them are not sought after in most lobbies. First is the Talisman of Light. With the buffs to 6 and 9 light, this item may once again become a chase to create Light Zed or certain other units that can benefit from the heal and attack speed it gives. Light is probably not making a huge comeback, but expect more Light players contesting spats this patch than last. Next is the nerf to Mage's Cap. Mage's Cap bug was fixed to no longer work on Annie for double tibbers, but is otherwise unchanged. It remains a desirable item to enable some CC bots and cheese comps. And finally, we arrive at Blade of the Ruined King, one of the most interesting items of the patch. The blade itself is unchanged, but the blender comp that it represents has shifted in many different ways. Between Kiana, Nocturne, and Sivir's direct stat nerfs, Red Buff, and Hush's nerfs, the potential for excellent use of Quicksilver, and buffs to Aatrox and Master Yi, there is a lot going on for Blender. The power level has hopefully dropped as a result of the changes, however the comp is almost certainly still viable, and its representation will be one of the biggest stories to follow over the coming weeks. And that is it for today's video. A blog will be up shortly for this tier list along with a more in-depth analysis of the patch notes. So keep an eye out for those. Which item are you most excited for in the new patch? Let us know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on Meta Monday for the top 5 comps in the new meta. Thank you all for watching and listening to Giant Slayer TV's Tier List Thursday.